Welcome to Baker Makes It, where in this episode we are going to be building a headache rack for my 2024 GMC Canyon. I just upgraded from a 2016 to a 24 and I lost about a foot of bed space, and my old setup looked a little bit like this. And it was just a regular crossbody box with a back rack, and I ran that setup forever. I had the same setup on my truck before that, and it's okay. But now with the shorter bed, I really only had a couple feet behind the toolbox, and I just wasn't liking that. So I drew something up in SketchUp, and this is what we're looking at here. Basically, we're gonna modify the existing rack using the mounting hardware, and we're gonna put two toolboxes on either side that are accessible from the ground. These toolboxes are Montezuma boxes, and they're just gonna be a lot easier to get to, and it will allow for space underneath the boxes. So we're gonna start cutting up the old one and just kind of piecing this together one part at a time. Let me show you the toolboxes and why I think these are gonna be so much better than the old setup. These are the boxes here. One of these is gonna go on each side, and it's gonna be totally accessible underneath, which is the really nice part. But what's gonna be great is that you don't have to climb up into the bed to get your stuff. And so on the driver's side, I'll have my air compressor. We've got some tire repair tools, just some basic things in the back there. We got some epoxy, a multimeter, tape measure. And then under here, we've got tire plugs, we've got fuses, hitch pins, stuff like that. And then on the passenger side, we've taken advantage of all the organizers that come in these boxes, and I've taken my socket set that I've had forever. It's probably 16, 18 years old. And I took the wrenches and the sockets and put them in here. It also left me room to put an extra impact that I have. Got some Allen wrenches, drill bits, driver bits, and then up under here we've got all kinds of pliers and various things. So really organized, really easy to get to, and it should stay that way. And so I think these boxes are going to be a much better solution, but we want to build something that suits them and that makes it look like it's on purpose. So let's look at what we're working with for the project. So this is kind of how this is going to sit. It's going to go up on the existing mounting hardware here, and we're going to use this bracket. There's a hole under there to mount to the stake pocket. But I don't really like how it looks with this rack. You know, we've got an angle difference here. It just kind of looks like it wasn't meant to be. So we'll come in here and we'll kind of recreate this angle. So we'll come up, we'll follow that angle, over, come up again, over the brake light, back down, and then same thing over there. So what I'm doing now is starting to piece together how we're gonna build this, because this essentially has a U-shaped piece here, but it's not like normal tubing. You know, like this is 2" by 3" tubing. If I slice down this, I can kind of recreate this. So I think that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna create a platform that comes under here to hold it, and then it'll have some sort of either just strap or some sort of decorative gusset on the side behind the toolbox, kind of like this, to hold the weight. The other thing I don't like is that these don't quite line up with the toolboxes. So we are gonna cut these off. We're gonna scrap this whole design and start over. We'll probably use those uprights again, but that's about it. We are gonna do a similar thing to what we have here, where we're gonna put some 3/8 inch pieces to protect the back windshield. But as of right now, we're gonna keep it really open. So I'm gonna cut some pieces here, kind of mock up one of these, see if it's gonna work the way I think it is, and then we'll start figuring out how the rest is gonna come together. All right, we've done some rough cutting here, and we've created the outer dimensions of the frame here, and then we'll cut a corner off of this that'll fill in and kind of take care of that. What I still have to do is cut the back of these tubings off to make it so that it's just U-shaped like that one. I did have to lop the corner off here as well, because the bottom of this sticks out further. I believe the reason for that is for the mounting hardware under here. So no worries, we'll weld to that when we put the new one in. But we are good to go. Actually, I'm realizing I probably didn't need to do that, because by the time, yep, didn't need to do that. By the time I cut the back off, that's not gonna be in the way. Oh well. We're gonna come in with a metal cutting circular saw, cut the backs off of these, and then we'll do a test fit again here. Well, slight change of plans. This is the metal circular saw we're gonna use, and it's missing more than half of its teeth, or at least parts of their teeth. So I've got this little jig set up here. I measured the back spacing, and you see where I started to cut here. With that thing sharp, it should do a nice job, but we're now waiting 2 days for that blade. So in the meantime, we're gonna start disassembling this and figuring out the rack part. So we're gonna cut these posts off. Well, probably not in that order. We're probably gonna cut this top off, we'll cut all these reinforcing pieces off, cut the posts off, just get everything cleaned up so we can start assembling this for real. I hope to get the other one done first, just to have something to reference, but I think we're just gonna go ahead and at least get this disassembled, and then we'll go from there. All right, so now that that's cut apart, what we've got going on here is a mock-up of the actual headache rack tubing. So what I did was I just set this on the ground here, and I started coming up with my angles. So this angle is 36 degrees, which resulted in a miter of 18 degrees. And you can see that follows the toolbox almost exactly. And then the one at the top there, you can see I've got marked at 27. And so as we follow this up, we've got the full picture here from top to bottom. Now this is going to get a little bit shorter. I'll show you why in a minute. But that's the general gist. And as long as that's side to side correct, this will follow or just be outside of the front of the toolboxes. This piece here will be the longer piece on the top that goes all the way across. So essentially, we're going to make this twice, and then we're going to make a connector piece at the top. So now that I know my angles, I can start cutting this out of square tubing. All right, so when I said I'd show you, what I mean is this toolbox is sitting about 1/4 inch lower than this, just because of the way this bracket sits. But what I'm realizing now is when this is here, this lid that I went off of this corner is actually overhanging quite a bit. So now as I look at my starting piece here, it's actually not tall enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and make that a little taller, which is probably gonna result in the next piece having to be a little shorter, but we'll make some tweaks here, get it sorted out. All right, we've got that sorted. We're leaving enough room here for a weld bead. This one did have to get shortened just a hair, and that 18 degrees is putting us just a little off from that angle. So probably what I'll do is I'll tack the outside, and then I'll kind of open this up to match as we install it. And that'll get us close enough, but that's dead on. And so from there, we should be good. So time to start cutting this stuff out of 2-inch square tube. All right, here is one side mocked up. Came in and beveled the joints here. One thing I've learned is that you never want to bevel the point because it makes it a lot harder to line things up. Get it tacked, then come back, grind that off. So we've got a real nice setup here. I think this is gonna work really well. Test fit both sides. So now we're gonna get this toolbox out of here and start tacking one side up. All right, it's late. I am dirty and tired, but we are making some great progress. Let me show you what we got here. So we've got the whole frame tacked up, test fit the boxes on both sides. It's within where I want it to be. I just added the 2 vertical supports. That'll give the top a little more strength. It'll also give the back of the box something to attach to when I run a diagonal there. So basically this is done. The only thing left is we're gonna run some 3/8 by 1.5 inch. That's this stuff, the same material it was on the original one, but I bought some new because it's a little wider. So probably just gonna do 2 runs across in the middle just to protect the rear windshield, and that'll be about it. And then I'll come back, clean all this, weld it up, and then the last step is gonna be to build the platforms. And so we still have all of our pieces cut for that, just waiting on some saw blades, which are coming in a couple days. So we're just about there. Let's get these little pieces in. All right, we've got those tacked in. Real happy with the way that makes it look. I'm struggling with what to do in that space, but I think that's a good setup there. I am going to leave it out in the sides because the toolboxes are going to cover that, so just kind of unnecessary weight at that point. But everything is tacked up. At this point, it's just building out these platforms and then whatever sort of diagonal setup we make. So once those saw blades are in, we'll get this thing wrapped up. All right, we're back another day, and I now have my saw blades. So I've started to cut the tubing to make our platforms for the toolboxes. So this is what we're working with here. I've sliced the side off of this, so now it matches this other side. And we had to cut just a little triangle to go in here to extend this long enough for the toolbox. I've also intentionally left this an 1/8 inch short. I'm gonna cut a plate similar to this. It'll get welded on the end there, and we're just gonna through bolt through. Thought I was gonna riv nut, but I think it's hidden anyway, and it's gonna be stronger, so we're just gonna through bolt. So pretty happy with how this went. It was tough cutting these because there's a lot of tension on these, and so as I cut it was pinching, which put up a fight a little bit, but I think we're good with that plan. We're gonna go ahead and do the same thing with this side now. The other thing I realized when I quit the other night, I said I wasn't gonna add pieces here, but I changed my mind. I am gonna do that because if I ever have lumber up on the rack here and I run a strap around it, it's nice to be able to get the strap around the post and still have something to hook to. That keeps it pulling further out versus if I put it on the inside, it'll slip in and it'll loosen up. So that gives it a lot of strength side to side. And because I'm losing the two little things on top of the rack to keep the lumber from sliding, that's especially important. So we are gonna come back and do that, but let's get these prepped, do a little plasma cutting, make our plates, and then we'll start tacking all this up. The final step is gonna be the diagonal piece from here. What I've decided to do here is match this kind of jagged thing here, and so I'm gonna plasma cut a piece that comes up, probably at a similar angle. It's gonna come up, it's gonna flatten out, and then it's gonna come up again. And then it'll probably get riv nutted into here. I haven't decided if I'm gonna riv nut or weld into there, but probably a nut. So we got a good plan here. Once all that's done, we got to drill some holes, and then this thing's ready for final welding and painting. Pretty exciting stuff. Cool to see it coming together. All right, I got a little carried away in the plasma cutter there and forgot to film all of it, but let me show you what we've got. So first things first, I drew up these brackets here to kind of match the angle of this outer shape here, but get out as far as I can without being ridiculous. So cut this out of 1/4 inch steel. This is gonna sit just a little off the bottom like that, and we're gonna use riv nuts to attach that, so I'll show you that process when we get there. Same thing for this side. Really happy with how that turned out. I think that looks kind of cool. And then we cut these plates as well. This has got a radius on this side to match the tubing, and then a smaller radius here to match more like the factory one. So this is gonna sit in there, that'll get welded to the end. We'll drill a hole through there, bolt that on, that'll be nice and strong. So next steps are gonna be a bunch of welding prep. I went ahead and grinded all these joints, so these are ready for welding. But I gotta clean the inside of this tubing, which is gonna be pretty tricky to clean the backside of. So I wanna do that before this all gets put together. So I'm gonna work on that, clean it up, and then we'll start tacking this whole thing together. All right, this thing's welded up. Some of these are real nice and some of them not so much. So a lot of these are gonna get blended. Any of these front and back edges are getting blended. These outside ones, this typically would not, but that weld's so bad I'm gonna try to grind it out and rerun it. There's just lots of blending all around to do. So we're bringing out the big guns. We got the 7-inch grinder with the sanding disc. We're gonna do the bulk of it with that. And then we'll weld up anything that looks like it needs a little love after that. And then we're gonna start working on just getting it all prepped for paint. And then we gotta drill holes for any of our mounting points. So lots left to do. We'll see what we can get done tonight. All right, we're getting somewhere. Everything's blended as far as it's gonna be tonight. It's getting late. So the one thing I can do without making a ton of noise is drilling. So let me show you what we've got. So what we're gonna do is drill for our mounting holes for here. I marked both sides. I had to use a clamp to push that one out a little to where it should be, but that's marked. And then I have clamped on our angle brackets here, angle braces, as well, where they're gonna go. And so I'm gonna mark those and we'll get some rib nuts in those. If you've never seen a rib nut before, this is what we're looking at here. This is kind of like a top hat shape, but you drill the hole, put this in the hole, this collar keeps it on top, and then the tool goes in and it pulls the back of this into the metal and it locks this into place, creating a threaded insert. Really helpful for stuff like this. The other option would be to actually thread it or to like put a nut behind it. But this is gonna be quick and easy, so I'm gonna go ahead and do these. Drill the holes for those, bolt them up, and then finally we're gonna put our toolboxes on here, mark the 4 holes on each of those, and hopefully get those drilled and rib nutted as well. And then tomorrow, clean this thing up, get some primer and paint on it. Oh man, this is coming together. This is super exciting. Everything's lining up really nice. The rib nuts worked great. You can see down there's one installed. We got our secondary bolts in here. So I don't have it all cranked down. I don't have lock washers on, any of that, but this is really looking sharp and everything is working out the way I hoped. So the last step as far as fabrication is bring the toolboxes over and there's 4 holes in the 4 corners marked, drill them, rib nut them, and then calling it a night. Tomorrow we'll do all of our paint prep, stripping, and get this thing primed and painted. Well, here's a test fit, guys. Everything lines up perfectly. I just could not be happier. I think this is gonna look really sick on the back of this truck. Lots of room in the middle, tons of visibility. And then when these boxes are open, we're still totally clear under there. Pretty slick. I am real happy with this. So now what we have to do is come under here. Be a little awkward, but there's holes in the corners here that we'll have to mark, and then we'll get them drilled and rib nutted. I thought I'd show you guys the process on this rib nut. I've screwed this on the front of this. They make manual versions of this tool, which I've used a bunch, but we have this pneumatic one, and this is amazing. So literally I just pull the trigger, it locks in, and then I'm gonna come to the top and I'm gonna spin this black screw out, and then that's going to free the tool from the rib nut. And there we go. That's all there is to it. With 2 hands it goes even faster. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the other 7 of these, and then we are gonna call it a night. All right, we are back bright-eyed and bushy-tailed today. We're gonna be using these Scotch-Brite strip discs on a grinder. We're just gonna go over all the surfaces on this, just rough up any of the old paint. We're going to take out some of the sanding scratches with this. It works really well for that. And then the primer is gonna fill in the rest. We're not gonna go too crazy trying to get it absolutely perfect. So I'm probably not gonna film this. It's super boring, but we'll move forward with some sanding and some grinding to get this thing ready for primer and paint today. All right, our parts are hanging in the booth. And so now we're gonna wipe everything down and get a couple coats of primer on there. All right, we got our primer sprayed. Now you can see all my bad welds. I definitely rushed this one. You could see some grinding marks there, but that's fine. It's gonna look fine once the toolboxes are on it. And it's just a lot of awkward angles and not the best welds. So we're gonna roll with it, but primer went on pretty good. We're just going to let this dry a little bit and then come back with our single stage satin black, get this thing sprayed up. We're back in the booth. Everything is dry and it's looking really nice. Really turned out good, and it feels nice and dry. So we're gonna go ahead and bring these pieces into the shop and get it all assembled, and then we'll get it up in the truck. Oh man, she's a beaut, Clark. That turned out real nice. We got the all the grade 8 hardware in with some lock washers. Because of the rib nuts, there's a slight gap in between, which I actually don't hate. It'll keep the paint from rubbing off real bad. Everything measures out good, and I believe we're ready to install. And so we're gonna drop this down on the bolts that are in the stake pockets on there. The thing that I realized is there's nothing holding the back of this down. In my old toolbox, there were little bed clamps, so I'm stealing a couple of those. We're gonna drill a hole through here and run a bolt to clamp the bottom of this to the bed as well. But I weighed this thing before I painted it. It's about 80 pounds. This is gonna be a little bit of a wrestling match, but we'll get this up there carefully and start setting it in place before we get the toolboxes on. It fits. Everything bolted up right like it should. We've got plenty of room in there. Side note, I used to have this closer on my old truck, and from the flex of the frame, this bolt had actually cracked my back glass, and it happened twice before I realized what was happening. So I keep that back a little further. Everything's looking great. Over here on this other side, this is up a little off the bed, so I loosened this bolt, and we're gonna add these clamps, which will pull it down. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna hold this like this, mark where this hole needs to be. We'll drill up under here and run a bolt down, clamp this down on both sides, and then I'll tighten up that bolt again. And then once that's on, we're ready to put toolboxes on. All right, that's in. It's flexing the bed out a little bit, but that's okay. It's better than nothing. Just keeps it from lifting up. Probably went a little tighter than I needed to. I am just so pumped about how much space is in the bed still. So I think the final step here is to get these toolboxes on. So I've got our bolts prepped. I'm gonna try to put rubber washers under here. I don't know if that's gonna work or not. That's just gonna be kind of tough by myself, but it's gonna be a little tricky to get these on here without dropping them, but we'll give it a shot. Holy cow, it is on there and looking great. It's definitely a different look. It's probably not going to be for everyone. The angle is a little different than the cab, which I knew going in, but just really thrilled with all this bed space. This is more space than I ever had in my old Canyon, and honestly better access to tools. Takes up a few inches more of the bed than the last one, but way more accessible. I can get to everything from the ground. I can reach easily up there, which is huge. So gotta get all these stickers off. Unfortunately, they're really poor quality stickers and don't want to come off, so I gotta go home and get a scraper. This is the side I'm really excited about. Just being able to get to all my mechanics tools from the ground. It's a huge upgrade. A little bit tough to close on this one. Adjusted the latch, but you really got to hit it hard. Well, that was a bit more of a project than I anticipated when I got started, but I am extremely pleased with how that turned out. It fits the truck, I think, really well. It fits my uses really well. All in all, I weighed this thing. We've got about 225 pounds, 80 pounds in the rack, 100 in the toolboxes, and then everything in there. So it's not light, but I think it is actually lighter than what I used to have. So we're gonna roll with it. I'm real happy with how this turned out. If you're interested in projects like this, please consider subscribing to Baker Makes It. I do a lot of cool projects whenever I can. I'm also working on restoring a 1971 Holiday Rambler travel trailer, which has been my big project. So check it out, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.